Today I'm joined by Kieran Osborne. Kieran's the founder of Squiggle Consult, a team of independent consultants offering a variety of estate planning services. And Kieran is also the founder of Your Estate Planning Partner, which is a software for estate planners, will writers and firms who want to modernise their operations. So welcome, Kieran.
Thank you very much, Simon. I hope you're okay.
Yeah, no, I'm very well. Thank you very much. And look, thank you for joining us today. So, look, Kieran, for anyone who doesn't know Squiggle or your estate planning partner, how would you describe what you do and who you do it for?
Yeah, so Squiggle Consult is an estate planning practice. We prepare wills, trusts, powers of attorney, and probate. It's ultimately our core job to make sure that people's wishes are respected when they could no longer say them themselves. And for us, it's about people first, paperwork second, really. So it's not about kind of churning lots of documents and things like that. It's about the people. It's one of the reasons why we built Your Estate Planning Partner, because we wanted to empower our staff to spend more time with our clients rather than just doing all the admin in the background. So ultimately, they kind of support each other, but now we're also helping lots of other estate planning practices as well.
Brilliant. Okay. No, it sounds like I couldn't agree more. It's yeah, focusing more on the client rather than the admin. And
Mm.
so let's go back to when you started out. So you started out in banking and then moved into estate planning after being made
Yeah.
redundant. So what what made you sort of decide to start a business?
For me, I've always had an inquisitive mind in processes and the way things are done. So even when I was at the bank, I would always question, why do we do it like this? Why don't we do it like that? Um, and I always wanted to start my own business, but I had this idea that I'm going to start it when I was 40. Because then I'm going to have learned all my mistakes and become much wiser. But then redundancy came about, and I was like, well, maybe here's my opportunity. And a company approached me to kind of retrain me in estate planning when I left the bank and be employed with them. After about 6 months, I realized that perhaps maybe I could do it on my own. I actually now still work with that original company, and they still I help their clients now. But for me, it's about just making sure I push myself and push myself. And one of the things that made me really sad when I left banking is that I was a relationship manager previously, and I had a portfolio of clients that I made sure that I looked after. When I left, naturally I was put on gardening leave, and I was trying to kind of debrief and say, well, hang on, this client's got this going on, this guy, and they didn't care at all. And I was like, don't worry, they're all going over to telephone banking. And I'm like, no, 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 because I know those deals are going to fall apart now. But they didn't care. And that's what I learned about the corporate world, I suppose, is that they didn't really care about the people. And that's something that I really want to make sure that we do in our business is make sure if someone leaves, all their clients there's a nice transition. We look after the people, and it's all about that, not just looking at the bottom line.
Yeah, look, I think I'm a big believer of automation, systemization, all those sort of things, but absolutely agree with you. Not at the expense of the service that the customer or the client receives. It should add to that, not
Mm.
not sort of subtract to that. So no, 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 absolutely brilliant. And so you're mentioning there that Squiggle Consult is built around an advice first ethical approach. So what's the what was the moment that you realised that that was the I don't know the core of your business rather than just a nice to have?
For me, you don't know what you don't know. And AI and online wills and technology and things is an empowering people to go and write their own planning.
Mm.
So I think going forward, our drafting team, it will be easy to write a will, and anyone can go and write a will. You can go to 20 years ago, the concept was you to go to WH Smith and get a kind of will writing pack. That's always been there. But like I say, you don't know what you don't know. So yes, brilliant. Anyone could go and write that very basic will, but do you know about, okay, what happens if your daughter got divorced? How would her inheritance be considered? What about if you died and your wife then went and remarried? Is the money going to end up going down to the children or down to those stepchildren now? So it's those things and it's these questions that we ask that I don't think a lot of people aren't ask. And certainly if you're doing it DIY, you're not going to know those things. We have during our process about 10 videos, just short clips that we go through with what we call the what ifs in life. These different scenarios that people aren't aware that, hang on, if that happens, that will's going to direct everything that way. And yeah, people don't understand that. And that's what I think is really, really important is about making sure that advice is there for clients.
And and what would you say the biggest learning that you've had since you've been in business?
For me, it's probably I don't know if it's a bit of ADHD in me, but side quests. Avoid getting distracted by those kind of exciting, glossy, kind of little side projects. For me, our core business is very successful and a really good service for our clients. But what then happens is I'm like, oh, that looks fun. Let's go and do a bit of that. And so, for example, we now have an online wheel writing platform because that was a kind of side quest I did a few years ago. And yep, your estate planning partner software. Really, that was built to support our core business, but now I'm also advising and selling it to other estate planning practices. Whereas what I really should be doing is focusing on our core business because for us that's what we're really good at. So yeah, it's trying to stay focused, and I suppose that's where business plans come in, and perhaps maybe that's I never had a business plan, and I still don't, if I'm honest. And it's trying to, I've got a kind of a rough idea in my head, I suppose, but it's making sure you don't get distracted by those things.
I call it, like I think that it's also known as the magpie effect, isn't it?
Yeah.
That you see these nice shiny things over there, and let's go over there, and then another one over there. And yeah, it's one of the biggest challenges that I come across with working with business owners. That yeah, and I love what you said there. Is actually it's to initially it's to focus on actually what you do and what you do really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, the time will come to scale, to grow, to branch out into other things. But yeah, focus on what you do.
And and that's one of the things that we've probably done over the last 18 months is employed the right people to stabilize, I suppose, the core business. So if we did want to go and do those things, it's okay. We don't drop the ball in that core business. And I think that's probably one of the biggest learnings is getting the right people to make sure keep the thing stable because at some point it feels like it's a runaway freight train and we're trying to like keep it going. And yeah, it's about having those core people in the business to make sure things keep running.
And you mentioned there about business plans, and you're right. I mean, it's a vast percentage of business owners that don't have business plans.
Mm.
And if they do, it's pretty much written, put in the bottom of the drawer, and never looked at again. But the analogy that I always use with this is how often do you get in your car and not know where you're driving to?
Yeah.
Um, you pretty much always know where you're driving to, and that's what a business plan does.
Mm.
It gives you that direction. Where am I going to? And then
Mm.
you can make those informed decisions when you see those nice shiny things. You can go, right, okay, my business plan is going this way. Is that nice shiny thing going to take me towards that, or is it
Yeah.
going to take me away from that?
Yeah.
But you might decide to go for it, but it's a conscious decision.
Yeah.
That's the key. So look, great share. Thank you for sharing that. And what's the biggest challenge that you've faced being a business owner, Kieran?
I think, like probably most businesses, cash flow is always
Mm.
a big issue. Um, and again, going back to what I was saying, it probably wouldn't be quite so much an issue if I didn't go and do those side quests. Again, probably why a business plan again is so important. But yeah, cash flow, like any other business, and just making sure that you plan for the downfalls. For us, for example, December is normally pretty quiet. Who wants to talk about death and dying at Christmas? Um, So that's always a quiet point for us. So therefore, just managing that cash flow around that time is really important. And I think for any business owner, is when you're planning is just prepare for those downtimes and always make sure you have reserves.
Yeah, look, great insight. And look, like you, I came from a background of banking. Um, and unfortunately, I saw multiple businesses fall over
Yeah.
that were really, really good businesses, had a really great product. But yeah, cash flow was the key issue. So yeah, and what would you, if you could wave a magic wand right now and solve one challenge in your business, what would that be, Kieran?
I think for me, probably consistency.
Right, yeah,
Um, our business allows our consultants, for example, to be incredibly flexible. But providing flexibility to your staff means that they love a work-life personal balance. But what happens is then one of our consultants has a month off. Well, that affects us. And for us, it's about trying to build that consistency. So if I can make sure that all of our consultants are working exactly the same, I don't care what how much they're doing, but just as long as it's always the same throughout the whole year. I think for that, for us and obviously new clients, if we can keep that always the same, steady trajectory, rather than peaks and troughs, I think that would be a great help for our business.
yeah, yeah, keeping that flow, and also links to what you sort of said earlier about cash flow as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
In terms of that
It
cash flow.
allows you to plan for that as well, rather than, oh, so and so is having a month off. Brilliant. Okay, how are we planning for this?
Absolutely, yeah. It's it is. I always think it's there's one thing uh, that the army or the military says, which is no plan survives first contact.
Hmm.
And what I get from that is that actually, yeah, we should always plan, but then we should always be prepared to adapt that plan
Yeah.
to what the circumstances that happen in the economy, in the environment, in internally in the business.
Mm.
Be flexible around the plans that we do have, but have plans.
Yeah, 100%.
So what so you've got two very different but yet sort of connected ventures. What's the one leadership lesson that you've learned from running two businesses?
Um, leadership is a people leadership.
Well, yeah, leadership, yeah, but let's link it to leadership, people leadership.
Yeah, so for me, there is so many different characters
Mm,
in people, and it's understanding what people's drivers are. Because one thing that drives me may not drive another person, and say my appetite for risk, for example, is incredibly different to someone else's. So it's just kind of understanding those drivers. One of my old bank managers um, used to taught me understand what's on your manager's agenda and what he needs to achieve to be successful, but also understand what's on your manager's agenda.
right,
And I
yeah.
think that's one of the things that I really understand. But in the reverse, in terms of down, is like, right, okay, what does that employee need to be successful? But what does their family want and things like that? Because ultimately, their success for the business is only going to be as good as what they can do for their family and their situation and things like that. Now, obviously, you can't go too personal with employees, but for me, it's about making sure that everyone is happy as they can be and they're on the right trajectory within the business because then they'll do want to do their best to help you.
Yeah, that's a really great point, and I like what your sort of manager sort of said there, because that's a really key thing in any business, isn't it? That actually everybody knows where the business is going,
Mm.
and everybody understands what's in it for them.
Hmm.
And which links to what you sort of said, because what's in it for them might be different for everyone.
Hmm.
Some people might want that they're a nice secure job. Some people might want, well, I want promotion. I want to be the future leader of this company.
Yeah.
But it's that key of the link. What you've sort of said there is everybody knows where the business is going. Everybody knows we're going in this direction and why, and everybody links it to them personally.
Hmm.
So yeah, what you've highlighted there is really key, and how.
And you've got those some staff want to finish at 5 o'clock, be out the door at 5:01 because they want to go and spend time with their families. So, and that's okay. That's not a problem.
Yeah,
But just as it's understanding those different dynamics, I
yeah,
suppose.
yeah, absolutely, completely agree. And look, you mentioned one of your old sort of back managers there. So who are your mentors? Who influences or what voices that have shaped your thinking as a business owner?
Yeah, I think I don't have kind of one person, I suppose, that's apart from family, obviously, that's been there throughout my kind of entire journey. But at probably every stage of my life, even going back to college, there was that one person that I looked up to and learned a lot from. And then there's one particular bank manager that I actually never used to get on with, but towards my end of not end of my career, but like when I was leaving Lloyd's, I started to get on with and actually thought what you were trying to do for me when I was 20 years old and thought I knew better was actually really trying to help me. And I now look back on some of those learnings and think, yeah, that's great. That shaped me today. And yeah, I've just had different mentors at different stages, but I do think it's very important. None of them have been, if I'm honest, a structured coach as such, but more just someone that I would pick up the phone to, spend an hour with on the phone. Yeah, and I think it's important, whether it's someone that you employ, have on a retainer, or even just a friend. I think it's really, really good to have someone to bring you back down to earth when needed, and also tell you when you're being stupid.
Yeah, look, I think look, you're absolutely right. We all need those people around us, just to talk to. Whether
Yeah.
it's, and not just in business as well, but in life in general.
Yeah.
As you say, friends, mentors, people that influences other business owners. Just people that we can pick the phone up and speak to. So,
Mm.
so what are you excited about right now about your business, Kieran?
I think for me, is what it can do for me personally is I haven't mentioned it yet, but I've got a baby due the end of this month.
Oh wow, congratulations.
I'm getting married in August. So for me, it's about again going back to that stabilization of making sure that everything can run without me,
Yeah.
or give me an element of stability, rather than having to worry about, because at the moment I do payroll and all those different things, is getting to a point where I don't need to worry about those things. And for me, that's what I'm really excited about, and that's what kind of 2026 is about. We started doing it in 2025, and we're just continuing that stabilization rather than focusing on growth. For the first 5 years of the business, it was all about growth. Now it's about stabilization, really.
That's absolutely key. And I think and linking back to your experience with Lloyd's, it's about, but it's doing it intentionally, about making yourself redundant.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
Actually, yeah. How can I make myself redundant from this business? Because we've got this common thing, particularly in this country, where, because we're a business owner, we think we need to work in our business.
Mm,
But actually, when you think about it, a business owner owns the business.
yeah.
They don't necessarily do the day-to-day operations or even get involved in it. Now, we can choose to do that if we want to. We can choose to give ourselves a role in the business of managing director or general manager or sales, marketing, finance, whatever. But
Mm.
but that's that we're choosing to give ourselves a job in our own business.
Yeah,
Um,
I like the idea of kind of having an MD and just focusing on strategy really. And I suppose that magpie effect really is that right, okay, we have a board, for example, like we'll get a board together, and then I will effectively, as the strategy person, present ideas to the board. Shall we go and do this? If they approve it, then I'll go off and start it, put a team in place, and then move on to the next exciting thing.
Absolutely, and that's exactly look, what you're talking about there is a true entrepreneur.
Mm,
We I think we misuse that word entrepreneur. An entrepreneur to me is somebody that owns, an emphasis on owns multiple businesses,
mm,
and actually they start to use other people's money to buy other businesses. They don't necessarily work in those businesses. So
No.
yeah, so what you're describing there is a true entrepreneur. And look, there's one question, Kieran, that I always like to ask everybody that's kind enough to join me on these sessions, and that's what is the best advice that you would give to an 18-year-old you?
Listen harder, I would probably say, is that I'm previously I haven't been very good at that, and been a bit of a know-it-all. And I think listen harder, and slow down, I suppose, not jump into things quite so quickly. Yeah, that's what I'd probably give an 18-year-old self that.
Great bit of advice, because I mean, you mentioned it earlier, didn't you, that we're all, we've all got a bit of this in us that, when we're younger we think we know better. And
Mm.
yeah, and it was interesting, that story you told, that actually, yeah, your manager back then was sort of saying certain things to you, but perhaps they didn't click or resonate at
Yeah.
the time. But actually later on in your career it started to click, and you realized,
Yeah.
why those things were being said. So
And
yeah,
it's
great.
ironic because I see those things with our younger, we've had work experience in before, and we've had young colleagues, and I see me in them and the way they react to certain things I'm saying. I'm like, guys, I'm not just being a not very nice person. I'm
Yeah,
trying to help you genuinely. So yeah, but that's, I suppose, maturity.
like it. Yeah, listen
Mm.
more. Brilliant. Okay, thank you for sharing that, Kieran. Well, look, Kieran, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today and sharing more about your businesses, but also your journey as well. So
Mm.
thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you for your time, Simon.